The rain had been falling for 3 straight days. Not the kind that just dampened clothes or made children splash happily in puddles, but a relentless, punishing downpour that carved trenches through the dirt roads of a forgotten village nestled in the arms of steep, unforgiving hills. Jamil, a barefoot 17-year-old boy with sharp eyes and a soul wiser than his years, stood on the edge of the only wooden bridge that crossed the raging river. His clothes were soaked through, his skin cold and raw, but he didn't move. Something didn't feel right. He looked downstream. The water, once gentle and crystal clear, had turned to a muddy beast, roaring louder with every passing minute. The villagers had started gathering in pockets, whispering of another flash flood like the one years ago that took away livestock, homes, and a few lives too. But Jamil wasn't worried about himself. He was worried about the unknown. Something inside him itched, a sense, a signal, something deep and ancient. Then he saw her. At first, just a shadow between trees, stumbling, slipping, fighting the rush of mud underfoot. A woman in a dark overcoat, clearly not from around here, half dragging a leather bag behind her. Her shoes were the kind you didn't wear in mud, her hair, once likely elegant, was matted against her cheeks. But it was her eyes, wide, terrified, searching, that met Jamil's just before she disappeared under the wave. Jamil didn't think. He just jumped. The water was merciless. It slammed him against jagged stones, pulled at his legs, spun him like a leaf. But his hand found her coat. He grabbed tight, bracing against the current, using his feet to push against submerged rocks, dragging both of them toward the old tree that bent over the riverbank like a crooked arm. "Hold on," he shouted, but the woman was barely conscious. Her lips were pale. She coughed violently as he lifted her over the edge of the bank, collapsed beside her, and stared at the sky, lungs burning, heart thudding. She was alive. Miss, can you hear me?" She nodded weakly. "What are you doing here?" "This place, it's dangerous during the rains." I was driving. GPS took me off the main road, my car, it stalled. Then water just," she coughed again. "I tried to find shelter. You're lucky I saw you." She managed a grateful smile, but Jamil could see it, something about her was different. Her coat was stitched from fabric he'd never seen. Her wristwatch gleamed with gold. The bag she clutched had a subtle, high-end logo, foreign to a boy who'd never left the village. "My name's Jamil," he said. She hesitated. Sarah, okay. Come on. We need to get out of here. My house isn't far." They walked slowly, with Jamil supporting most of her weight. Mud sucked at their feet. The sky remained heavy with gray, thunder rumbling like a warning. But Jamil wasn't afraid. His instincts had saved her. And now it was something else. A feeling growing in his chest. By the time they reached his home, a small clay hut with a thatched roof, his mother, a thin woman with soft eyes and calloused hands, rushed out. "Ya Allah! What happened?" "She fell in the river. She's hurt." Without hesitation, his mother helped Sarah inside, gave her dry clothes, old and faded but clean, made hot tea from their only remaining leaves, and offered her a cot by the fire. Despite her exhaustion, Sarah couldn't help but stare at the boy and his mother. So little, yet so giving. That night, as rain tapped softly on the roof, Sarah asked, "Why did you help me, Jamil? You don't even know me." He shrugged. "You needed help. That's enough, isn't it?" But it wasn't enough for Sarah. In the days that followed, the floodwaters receded, and the sun returned. Sarah stayed in the village for a week, recovering. Her phone had drowned, her car swept away. And yet, she wasn't desperate to leave. She spent hours with Jamil, walking through fields he plowed with his bare hands, listening to the stories of a boy who had never known a classroom, yet spoke of dreams with fire in his voice. "I want to build a school," he told her one afternoon. "Not just for this village, for all the villages. Kids shouldn't grow up like me. They should read, write, become something." Sarah smiled softly. "That's a beautiful dream." "Someday," he said, looking toward the hills. "Someday." What Jamil didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was who Sarah really was. Sarah Alden, CEO of a multinational tech firm. one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world. Known to the media as ruthless, brilliant, and fiercely private. She had been on a silent sabbatical, away from press, away from expectations. No security, no entourage. Just a quiet road trip to rediscover her own soul. She'd found something better. One evening, she asked, "Jamil, what if someone believed in your dream? What if they could help you?" Jamil laughed. "Only God helps people like me. But what if God sent someone?" He looked at her, puzzled. Sarah hesitated. She wanted to tell him. To reveal her world. But every time she looked at him, humble, sincere, innocent, something in her resisted. She wasn't ready to break the delicate bond formed between them. Not yet. Instead, she asked, "If you could do anything, be anything, what would you choose?" Jamil thought for a long moment. "I'd choose to change one life. Just one. If I can do that, my life's worth something." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. In a world of billion-dollar mergers and boardroom wars, she'd forgotten what true impact looked like. It wasn't about changing markets. It was about changing people. She left quietly the next morning. But she didn't leave Jamil's life. Not forever. Not even close. Fire Chapter 2 coming next, the billionaire's return, and a village transformed. Make sure you don't miss what happens when Sarah returns, not as a stranger, but as a force that will reshape Jamil's world. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter, stories that move souls and bring hope. It had been 6 months since Sarah left the village. 6 months since the flood, the rescue, and the boy who changed her life with nothing but his courage and kindness. Jamil still stood by the river every morning. The bridge had long since been washed away, but he would look toward the hills, wondering where she'd gone. Sometimes he smiled. Other times, he ached quietly inside. He didn't have a phone. He didn't know her last name. All he had was a memory, and hope. That hope kept him going. He worked harder than ever. He took on odd jobs in neighboring farms, collected firewood, helped mend fences. At night, he scribbled letters in a notebook, ideas for a school he might never see. And even though he had no way to send them, they felt like letters to her. His mother noticed the change. Jamil no longer spoke of leaving the village, he spoke of lifting it. Of creating something lasting. He told the other children stories, taught them numbers with sticks and stones, read from old newspapers scavenged from town trash. Still, the world remained the same. Quiet. Dusty. Forgotten. Until one bright morning. It began with a sound no one in the village had heard before, engines. Not one, but several. First came a sleek black SUV, followed by 2 trucks with crates covered in tarps. Then, a third vehicle, clean, silent, tinted windows. Everyone stopped to stare. Men paused in the fields. Children chased alongside the cars. And when the door opened, they couldn't believe their eyes. Sarah stepped out. But she wasn't the same. Gone was the tattered coat. In its place, a tailored cream suit that shimmered in the sun. Her shoes sparkled. Her wristwatch gleamed. Behind her stood 2 assistants, and behind them, boxes and boxes. Jamil, frozen, dropped the bag of grain he was carrying. She saw him. Smiled. And walked straight into his stunned embrace. "You came back," he whispered, voice trembling. "I told you," she said. "Sometimes God sends someone." That day, everything changed. Sarah gathered the entire village beneath the old fig tree. She told them her full name. Her company. Her plans. She introduced architects, contractors, and a team of volunteers. She wasn't just visiting. She was rebuilding. "For the boy who saved me," she said, locking eyes with Jamil, "and for the dream he carries." They broke ground that very afternoon. In a matter of weeks, the village had internet. Solar panels. Clean water pipes. But most importantly, foundations for the first community learning center. Jamil was at the heart of it all. Sarah worked side by side with him. He learned how to manage teams, read blueprints, lead meetings. He blossomed under her mentorship. And in the evenings, when the sun dipped below the mountains, they would sit under the fig tree, just the two of them. One night, Jamil asked softly, "Why me, Sarah? Why did you care so much?" She looked at him, emotion shining in her eyes. "Because when I was drowning, literally and in my own life, you didn't ask who I was. You didn't ask for anything. You gave. You believed. That's rare." Jamil lowered his gaze. "But I'm just a boy from a mud hut." "No," she said firmly. "You're a leader. A light. And the world needs people like you." Months passed. The school was completed. Children from miles away came to attend. Teachers were brought in. Uniforms were sewn. For the first time in the village's history, learning was more than a dream, it was alive. Jamil stood at the front of the first class. He wasn't just a student. He was the head of the center. A teacher. A mentor. A visionary. At the inauguration ceremony, Sarah took the stage. Cameras flashed, journalists from major networks had arrived, hungry for the story. "This," she said, gesturing to the school, the children, the smiling villagers, "is not just a charity project. This is a future built from kindness. From courage. From one boy who chose to act." The crowd cheered. And then she turned to Jamil. "You once told me you wanted to change just one life. I think you've already changed hundreds." Tears welled up in his eyes. He couldn't speak. He just hugged her tightly. But even as joy filled the village, something deeper stirred within both of them. They had built something beautiful together. But what about them? Sarah, with her billion-dollar empire. Jamil, still rooted in the red soil of his homeland. Could they exist in the same world? The night before she was scheduled to return to the city, Jamil sat alone under the fig tree. Sarah found him there. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said. "I know. But I'm not done here." "I know that too." They sat in silence. The wind rustled the branches above. "Jamil," she said gently, "come with me." He turned to her, startled. "Not forever. But for a time. Learn with me. See the world. And then, bring it back here. Make your dream even bigger." He hesitated. "I've never been outside this valley." "You stepped into a flood to save a stranger. You can step into a plane to save your dream." He smiled, slowly. "And if I come back?" "I'll be waiting," she whispered. A year later, the village was unrecognizable. The school had expanded. A small clinic had been built. Trade had increased. And above the old clay house where Jamil once lived stood a two-story learning dormitory. His name was carved on the stone, Jamil's Dream Center. Sarah visited often. But more than that, she had found something no money could buy, a reason to care again. And when Jamil finally returned from his first year abroad, wiser, bolder, and more determined than ever, he found her waiting by the river, just like he had all those months ago. "I told you," she said. "God sends someone." "And sometimes," Jamil replied, smiling, "he sends them back too." The story of Jamil and Sarah. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the quiet power of kindness, and how one good deed can ripple across the world, then please. Sparkling heart like this video. Bell subscribe to our channel. Loudspeaker share this story with someone who needs hope today. You never know whose life your small act of kindness might change. Just like Jamil never knew he was rescuing a billionaire who would change everything. The sun rose gently over the hills, casting a golden hue over Jamil's village, a place once marked by struggle, now buzzing with quiet transformation. Roads were smoother. Houses were stronger. Children ran through the streets with books in hand and dreams in their hearts. And at the center of it all was Jamil. Now 20, taller, and wearing the soft confidence of a man who'd touched the world and returned to elevate his roots, he walked through the village every morning before the school bell rang. The children greeted him with excitement, calling him Sir Jamil, and clinging to his hands as he passed. But though the village had bloomed, and though Jamil had achieved more than he'd ever imagined, a part of him still waited. waited for her. Sarah had returned to the city to manage her company, now doubling in value thanks to bold moves and sharp strategy. But she hadn't gone back to her old self. Her team noticed it. She smiled more. She listened more. She no longer lived for the next billion-dollar deal, she lived for the next meaningful one. She spoke often of rural education, sustainable infrastructure, grassroots empowerment. And every month, without fail, she video-called the school. The calls were warm, full of laughter, sometimes awkward silences, and lingering eye contact. But neither said what they truly wanted. Until the call that changed everything. "Jamil," she said one evening, her voice softer than usual, "I'm coming back. Not just for a visit. I need time away from this world." His heart skipped. For how long? A few months. Maybe more. I don't want to just drop in anymore. I want to be part of it. Of everything you've built. Jamil didn't know what to say. His heart knew what it meant. But he couldn't dare to hope. Could someone like her ever truly stay? When Sarah returned, she didn't bring the SUVs or assistants. Just herself, a backpack, and a decision to move into one of the new guest cottages near the school. She began teaching part-time, basic finance and business to older students. She joined the Farmers' Council to help improve trade. She walked with Jamil through the same fields where he had once confessed his dreams. Their bond deepened. But still, the question hung in the air, what were they now? One evening, while fixing a broken projector in the school hall, their hands brushed. They froze. "I missed this," she whispered. He looked at her, heartbeat thudding. "Sarah. I never stopped thinking about you." She stepped closer. "I was scared. Scared of what people would say. A billionaire and a village boy. I'm not that boy anymore." "No," she said, eyes shining. "You're the man who saved me. And then rebuilt everything I thought I valued." He reached for her hand. "And you're not just a billionaire. You're the woman he paused, breath caught, "I never thought I'd be lucky enough to love." Silence. Then a single tear slid down her cheek. "You don't have to be lucky, Jamil," she whispered. "You just have to be brave enough to say it." And so he did. "I love you, Sarah." Her smile was all the answer he needed. The news spread through the village like wildfire. Whispers. Raised eyebrows. Some skeptics. Why would she love a village boy? She'll leave. They always do. But Sarah stayed. And she worked harder than ever to earn their respect. She helped establish women-led co-ops, sponsored scholarship programs, and launched a microfinance initiative for small farmers. And she did it all with Jamil. They became partners, not just in love, but in vision. Together, they expanded the learning center into a regional training hub. They brought doctors to build a small medical outpost. They created opportunities no one had ever imagined possible. And slowly, the villagers saw what Sarah saw, that Jamil was no longer just a poor boy. He was their future. One night, under a clear sky dusted with stars, Sarah and Jamil sat by the river, the very river where it all began. "Do you ever think," Sarah asked, "what might have happened if you hadn't seen me that day?" "I think about it all the time," Jamil said. "And it scares me." "Why?" "Because if I hadn't looked, if I'd stayed home that morning, I would have missed you. I would have missed everything." She leaned on his shoulder. Maybe fate doesn't wait for permission. Maybe it just finds a way. They sat in silence, hearts full. Then Sarah pulled something from her pocket. A small velvet box. Jamil stared, stunned. "Is that?" She opened it. A simple silver ring. No diamonds. No gold. "Just a promise," she said. "That no matter where we came from, no matter where we go, I choose you." Jamil laughed through tears. "You were supposed to let me propose." "I'm not great with traditions," she teased. He took the ring, slipped it on, and said, "Then let's make our own." Their wedding was held in the village, beneath the fig tree. No tabloids. No paparazzi. Just family, friends, students, and neighbors. The richest woman in the region married the village boy who saved her. And together, they vowed not just to love one another, but to lift every life they touched. Years later, people would tell the story of a storm, a boy, a stranger, and how the heart, when guided by kindness, doesn't care about wealth, titles, or status. It only knows truth and love. Their forever began with a flood. If this story touched you, help us reach more hearts. Sparkling heart, like this video. Bell, subscribe to our channel. Loudspeaker, share this story to inspire someone today. One act of kindness changed everything. Imagine what yours can do. The years had passed like seasons, one folding gently into the next. The village was no longer just a forgotten place on a dusty map. It had become a living testament to the power of love, vision, and a single act of kindness. Sarah and Jamil's story had traveled far beyond the hills. It was taught in classrooms, whispered in boardrooms, and played out in documentaries. But at its core, it remained simple: a boy who saved a stranger, and a woman who changed his world, but who was also forever changed by his. Now in their mid-30s, Sarah and Jamil walked through the school grounds, hand in hand. Children laughed in the background. The walls of the once humble school were now painted with murals, portraits of cultural pride, hope, and unity. A newly built wing housed digital labs, a library, and a counseling center. Jamil had ensured the learning was not just academic, but emotional and mental too. Sarah had made sure no child in the village would ever be denied education because of money. That morning, they were walking toward a small crowd gathered at the new plaza: students, villagers, teachers. At the center stood a large, cloth-covered statue. A ribbon stretched across the stone base. Jamil frowned. "You sure about this?" he asked Sarah. She smiled gently. It's time they knew who the real hero is. The ceremony began with music from the students' band. A former student, now a graduate and teacher herself, stepped forward with a speech about transformation, courage, and leadership. And then, the cloth was pulled away. There stood a life-sized statue of a young boy holding out his hand, reaching eye